I thought I was buying peace, quiet, and the satisfaction of fixing up a forgotten piece of land. Instead, what I got was an HOA war I never signed up for. I didn't know a single renovation project would turn into uniformed guards busting through my door, shouting that I was trespassing on land I legally owned. What I didn't expect was how far they would go and how far I would go to prove them wrong. I bought the old cabin for one simple reason. I needed a break from people. My job was remote, stressful, nonstop. The kind where you wake up answering emails and go to sleep thinking about the ones you forgot to send. My phone was constantly buzzing, and my apartment shared a wall with a neighbor who believed 2 a.m. was the perfect time to rearrange furniture. So when I saw the listing for a neglected but promising wooded cabin located just outside Pine Ridge community, something clicked. The aerial photo showed 3 full acres surrounded by pines that swayed like they whispered secrets. The cabin itself looked like a relic, leaning slightly to one side, its porch sagging and railing broken. The windows were fogged with dust, and the front steps were nearly swallowed by tall grass. To me though, it looked like freedom. I called the realtor. Just to confirm, I said, "This is not part of the Pine Ridge HOA, right?" Correct," she answered. The HOA boundary ends about half a mile from the property line. This cabin is completely independent. Perfect. I closed the deal within the week. The paperwork was clean. The deed was clear. The property line was marked and recorded in the county system. Everything was smooth, at least until I met Pine Ridge's self-appointed queen. The first confrontation on the first morning of renovation, I drove out with my truck loaded. Lumber, power tools, generator, bottled water, and enough snacks to survive a mild apocalypse. The air smelled sharper out here, pine, dirt, the kind of freshness cities forget exists. Birds chattered in the tall branches as I stepped out. My boots crunched the gravel, and sunlight filtered through the trees like golden stripes. It felt right. I started unloading my tools, humming to myself, when I heard a voice slice through the morning. "Hello," I looked up. There she was. A woman around mid-50s, blonde bob haircut stiff with hairspray, lips pursed so tight she looked like she was sucking a lemon, arms crossed, eyes narrowed with judgment. A full-powered HOA-style Karen, built to specifications. She stood on the edge of the dirt road like she controlled the forest. "You can't be here," she barked. I wiped sweat from my forehead. I own this property." "No, you don't," I blinked. "Yes, I do. This cabin belongs to Pine Ridge HOA," she snapped, "and strangers don't get to wander onto private property." I almost laughed. "This isn't Pine Ridge HOA property." She lifted her phone and snapped a picture of my face without warning. "Hey!" She snapped another of my license plate. "I am reporting this," she declared. "For what?" "For trespassing." I stared at her completely bewildered. "For trespassing on my land. It's not your land," she hissed. He hissed. "We have been maintaining this area for decades. It is part of our community." I remembered what the realtor said. The cabin predated the HOA, way before Pine Ridge even existed. I took a breath. "Look, ma'am, that's Mrs. Harlow," she snapped. Of course it was. "Okay, Mrs. Harlow," she snapped. Of course it was. "Okay, Mrs. Harlow." "This cabin isn't part of your HOA. That's what criminals say." I opened my mouth to respond, but she turned around sharply and marched off while typing furiously on her phone. I didn't know it then, but that message she sent would trigger everything. The first break-in attempt, I tried to ignore her. People like that thrive on attention. I kept working, tearing out rotten boards, checking the roof for weak spots, sweeping dust and debris from inside. The cabin was in terrible shape, but it had good bones. Under the grime, it felt solid. Worth saving. Around noon, I was kneeling by the front door installing new deadbolts when I heard gravel crunching outside. Then heavy footsteps, multiple sets. I stood. The pounding on my door shook the frame. "Open up. Oh yeah, security." I froze. "Oh, what?" Before I could reach the door, they kicked it in. The door burst outward, slamming against the wall. 3 men in black, tactical-looking uniforms barged in. Bulletproof vests, radios, batons. The whole dramatic setup, except none of it was official. No badges, no government markings, just patches that read, "Pine Ridge Community Security, the leader, shaved head, thick neck, sunglasses indoors. Step forward. You are trespassing in a restricted property," he said flatly. "Identify yourself." "I own this cabin," I yelled. He ignored me. "You have no legal right to be inside," he said. "You need to leave." One of the guards started checking cabinets. Another walked into the back rooms, shining a flashlight. "Hey, don't touch my stuff. Don't interfere," the leader said. "We are doing an assessment." "Assessment of what?" I shouted. "This is my property. We'll need to verify that." I shoved my deed toward him. He didn't even look at it. "There is no record of this being a private non-HOA property," he said confidently. "The board has classified this as a historical community structure." I nearly choked. "You can't classify something you don't own." He leaned closer. "Lower your voice." "No," I said, backing up and raising my phone. "Say what you just said again." He stiffened. "I turned that off." "Nope," I said, hitting record. "You broke into my cabin. Keep talking. Keep talking." His jaw twitched. "You're making this harder on yourself." I laughed bitterly. "What? Are you going to arrest me? With what authority? Imaginary HOA superpowers." He didn't appreciate that. "You insisted on this," he said, signaling his team. "Photograph everything." They began taking pictures of all my tools, my supplies, the interior, even things they had no business touching. It felt like a parody of law enforcement if the entire script had been written by delusional suburbanites. I texted the sheriff's office. "HOA guards broke into my cabin. Need deputies ASAP." The sheriff arrives 20 minutes later. A sheriff's deputy finally arrived. When he stepped inside, he froze at the sight of 3 wannabe soldiers rummaging through my cabin. "What exactly is happening here?" the deputy asked. The leader stepped forward confidently. "This man is trespassing on Pine Ridge HOA property." The deputy eyed him. "This is outside HOA bounds." The leader insisted. "We have new jurisdictional maps from the board." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "From the board?" "Oh yes, and not from the county." I handed the deputy my deed. Fuss. He checked it. Then he checked my ID. Then he opened his tablet and pulled up county JS maps. A moment later he said, "This property is not part of Pine Ridge HOA." The guard stiffened. As if on cue, Karen appeared in the doorway, breathless and dramatic. "Officer, thank goodness you're here." "Arrest him," the deputy turned. "Ma'am, please step back. He's breaking into our cabin. This structure belongs to Pine Ridge." "No, it doesn't," the deputy said firmly. "This cabin predates your HOA." Her face fell. "No, that can't be right," she protested. "Our map says—" I am looking at the county map," he interrupted. "The legal one." Karen looked like someone had unplugged her. The deputy turned to the guards. "You 3 need to leave, now." The leader tried one last time. "We were following orders from the HOA. A HOA has no legal enforcement power here," the deputy snapped. "You entered private property without authorization. That is illegal." The guards exchanged nervous glances. I crossed my arms. "I'd like to press charges." Karen gasped like I'd slapped her. "You can't do that. They're community officers." The deputy stared at her. "A community officer's not a legal title." The guards left in silence, humiliated. "But Karen," she glared at me with pure venom. "This isn't over," she hissed. She stomped off, and she meant every word. The sign war begins 2 days later. I arrived at my cabin only to find a massive new sign hammered into my driveway. "No trespassing, property of Pine Ridge HOA." I laughed out loud. They must have installed it at night. Fine. I went to town, printed 12 copies of my deed, zoning map, and county plat, laminated everything, screwed them onto a giant board, then installed my own sign right next to theirs. "This is not HOA property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. County verified. Owner lives here." And in bold red, "HOA does not own this land. Stop lying." Within hours, photos of the signs blew up on the local Facebook group. People were arguing, fighting, taking sides. Some mocked the HOA. These were terrified of them. The HOA president emailed me, "You are misrepresenting community boundaries. Remove your sign immediately." I replied with a PDF of all the legal documents and my video of their guards breaking in. The sheriff's department opened the case. The HOA counterattacks. OA people don't like losing, especially not to someone outside their kingdom. Over the next few days, they tried sending me bogus violation notices. I wasn't in their HOA. They tried demanding I pay a community maintenance fees. I owed nothing. They warned that my unauthorized construction would be reported. I had permits. They didn't know that. They even sent a letter threatening to remove hazardous structures. Translation: destroy my cabin. But my favorite moment? When I caught Karen trespassing at 6 a.m., taking photos of my foundation work from behind a tree. I stepped outside and said, "Morning, want me to pose?" She shrieked and ran. The second break-in, worse than the first. I wish I could say the guards learned their lesson. They didn't. 1 week later, they came back, this time at night. I had installed trail cams and motion sensors around the cabin. Around 2:13 a.m., an alert went to my phone. Movement detected. Front porch. I opened the live feed. 3 HOA guards. Again, this time they didn't knock. They tried to force the door open quietly, using tools. I hit record on all cameras and called the sheriff again. But I also grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch from the side door. "Looking for something?" I asked. They froze like raccoons caught in headlights. One muttered, "We're conducting a safety check. On property you don't own?" The board said, I cut him off. "You are aware this is all being recorded, right?" They looked at the camera mounted on the doorframe and went pale. The sheriff arrived. The guards were detained. Karen showed up crying dramatically. The HOA president was summoned. The sheriff threatened criminal charges. It was chaos. And I had cameras rolling for every second. The turning point after that night, everything changed. Suddenly, 2 guards resigned. HOA dropped its historical structure claim. Karen was removed from her community enforcement committee. The sheriff warned the HOA that any further incidents would result in charges. But the biggest moment? A letter from the county government. The Pine Ridge HOA is hereby ordered to cease all actions regarding the property located at parcel 98-171. The land is confirmed as privately owned. Any interference will result in penalties. Boom, war over. Well, almost. Because I had one more victory to finish, I uploaded a video titled, "HOA guards broke into my property. Big mistake." It gained traction. Then thousands of views. Then tens of thousands. People loved seeing bullies lose, lose, lose. The peace returns. I finally got back to renovating. New porch, new windows, fresh siding, a warm interior with pine wood panels, upgraded plumbing, solar panels on the roof, a little fire pit out back. Every nail hammered felt like reclaiming my space. Every board replaced felt like an act of defiance. Sometimes neighbors walked by. They avoided eye contact. Good. A few whispered apologies. A few pretended it never happened. Karen, she stopped walking near my property altogether. Life was quiet again. Just me, the trees and the cabin I fought for. The problem with peace is that once you've tasted war, every quiet moment feels suspicious. After the guards were detained and the county stepped in, the forest went silent in a strange way. Not peaceful quiet, more like the silence animals make when they're watching a predator walk by and aren't sure if it's truly gone. I kept renovating, but I stayed alert. HOA seemed embarrassed, shamed, but people like them don't disappear quietly. They withdraw, regroup, and wait for the right moment to reclaim their imaginary power. And I wasn't wrong, because just when I thought things had settled, phase 2 began. The HOA finds a new angle. It started innocently. The mailman handed me a stack of letters one morning while I was sanding down the window frames. Among the junk mail and supply catalogs, one envelope stood out. Heavy cream paper, fancy embossed logo, overpriced stamps. It was from Pine Ridge HOA, SOA. I considered throwing it straight in the fire pit, but I opened it, mostly for entertainment. Inside was a very long, very dramatic letter, a notice of environmental violation. I blinked. Apparently, according to the PA, my renovation was damaging local wildlife. My tools were creating hazardous noise levels. My vehicle was disrupting the natural aesthetic. My trash bags posed a contamination risk. My generator threatened bird migration patterns. My fire pit was a danger to surrounding homes. Homes that were half a mile away deep behind trees. At the bottom, they demanded I appear before the HOA board for a mandatory environmental compliance hearing. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the letter. I pulled out a pen and wrote across the page in red, "I am not in your..." Oh, then mailed it back. That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, the real problem appeared. The HOA hides spies in the woods. I spotted him around 7 p.m. while cleaning up tools. A man crouched behind a tree holding binoculars. He was maybe in his mid-60s, thin, wearing khaki shorts, a Pine Ridge volunteer badge, and an expression of deep concentration like he was bird-watching, except the bird was me. I walked toward him. He ducked behind the tree. I kept walking. He popped up again, startled, and stumbled backward. "What are you doing?" I asked. He held up his hands. "I'm just observing. Wildlife count. What wildlife? I looked around. Your binoculars were pointed directly at my cabin. He stuttered. I'm monitoring the area. HOA board request. So Karen had replaced guards with volunteers. Say, oh wait, a leaf, I said. You can't order me to leave the forest. This forest is on my land. He froze. Then he bolted like a frightened squirrel. I watched him run back toward the HOA side of the woods. Ridiculous, but it didn't stop there. For the next 3 days, different old men ibad behind the same tree. A teenager pretended to train for track while running circles around my driveway. A woman walked her dog past my cabin 12 times in 1 hour. Someone flew a drone low enough that it almost hit my chimney. All HOA members, all watching me, all pretending it was normal. It wasn't surveillance. It was intimidation dressed up as hobbies. I installed more cameras and let them try. The HOA president arrives in person one afternoon. While leveling the cabin floor, someone knocked, politely, which already told me it wasn't the guards. When I opened the door, a tall man in a navy blazer stood there, posture stiff, expression stern. He looked like the kind of guy who practiced yelling at employees in the mirror. I'm Thomas Bradford, he said, a president of Pine Ridge HOA. Of course he was. I need to speak with you. No thanks, I said and shut the door. He knocked again, harder. Sir, this matter is urgent. I opened the door an inch. Not my problem. We are trying to resolve a community concern. Your community isn't my community. He exhaled sharply through his nose. Listen, your cabin, my cabin, is an eyesore. I smirked. It was an eyesore. I'm fixing it. That is precisely the issue, he snapped. Your renovation is drawing attention away from our neighborhood aesthetic. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're saying making my property better is upsetting your HOA is incredible. He leaned forward. We are willing to offer you a settlement. I raised an eyebrow. Settlement? Yes. The HOA is prepared to offer you a monetary incentive to leave. A leave? Yes. We will buy your land. I laughed. You can't afford my land? He bristled. We have substantial resources. No, I said, but the cabin stays. He looked frustrated. Please understand, we are trying to avoid conflict. You mean avoid legal consequences. His jaw tightened. We want this area to remain under community standards. It never has been. It should be. There it was. The truth, this wasn't about aesthetics. This wasn't about wildlife. This wasn't about noise or trash or property values. This was about control. They wanted my land to be theirs. Period. I closed the door slowly, staring into his eyes the whole time. He stood there a moment longer. Then he whispered through the wood, "This is not over." The sabotage begins the next morning. I woke up to find my lumber pile tossed off the porch nails, scattered in my driveway, the generator cord cut, muddy boot prints around my cabin, a dead raccoon placed on my steps. Someone was trying to send a message, and not a subtle one. I checked my cameras. Just past midnight, figures moved in the darkness, hoodies, baseball caps, gloves. They worked fast, carefully avoiding direct view of the lenses, almost like they'd been trained by someone familiar with surveillance, HOA guards, or the president's little task force. Either way, they knew what they were doing. I submitted the footage to the sheriff. He sighed and said, "They're stepping into criminal mischief territory." But that wasn't even the worst part. Around 3 p.m. that same day, Karen marched straight up my porch like she owned the place. You caused this. She screamed. Caused what? Our community. Falling apart. People online are mocking us. The show board is furious. It's your fault. My fault that you broke the law? I asked. She jabbed a finger at me. We had order. We had standards. And then you came here and destroyed everything. I stared, baffled. By existing? She let out a strangled noise. You don't understand how things work here. No, I said calmly, I don't understand how you think they work. She stomped her foot. We run this place, not my land, she shook with rage. You will regret this, she whispered. Then she stormed off. Again, the night of the fire, everything blew up. Literally, it's 3 nights later. At 1:40 a.m., one of my motion detectors triggered. Not near the cabin, near the tree line. I checked my monitor. 5 people, sneaking, carrying something. I zoomed in, gas cans. My heart stopped. They were moving toward the cabin with purpose. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and sprinted out the back door quietly, hiding behind trees as I moved. Two of the intruders poured gasoline around the left wall of the cabin. Another tried to splash it near the porch. The last two stood watch with flashlights. This was arson. Planned, organized, deliberate, and deadly. I yelled, "Hey, back away from the cabin." They freaked out, dropping one of the cans and stumbling. One flashlight hit the ground. They looked up at me, faces masked, but not well enough. I recognized two instantly. HOA guards who'd resigned. Figures. Cowards never quit. They just go underground. One of them lit a match. I pulled out the bear spray I kept on my belt and sprinted forward, hitting the flame holder directly in the face. He screamed, dropped the match, and rolled on the ground. The others scattered. Two ran deeper into the forest. One tripped. One cripped. One got sprayed too. Another yelled something about calling the HOA president. I grabbed the gasoline can, kicked it away, and kept my flashlight on the group. Police sirens blared through the darkness moments later. Deputies arrived fast. Two arsonists were caught on sight. One was tackled trying to flee. Two escaped but were identified through footage. The sheriff looked furious. "These people are part of that HOA, aren't they?" he asked. I nodded. Former guards. He cursed under his breath. "This isn't an HOA dispute anymore," he said. "This is attempted arson and conspiracy." He wasn't lying, sir. The county prosecutor got involved. The charges were filed. And Pine Ridge, HOA? They panicked. The head HOA collapses the next board meeting, which I obviously didn't attend, became infamous. Because residents recorded it and posted it online, the president tried to deny knowing anything. Karen screamed at everyone. Half the room accused the board of endangering the community. People demanded resignations. Some threatened lawsuits. Some cried about safety. Some yelled about a power-hungry leadership. The video went viral. When the sheriff arrested the two guards and one volunteer publicly, the HOA reputation died overnight. Within a week, the president resigned. Karen was banned from all committees. Half the board stepped down. A lawsuit was filed against the HOA by its own residents. County inspectors demanded the HOA cease all enforcement activities. Pine Ridge went from a strict and proud to a most dysfunctional HOA in the county almost instantly. And all because they couldn't handle one man renovating a cabin. The county's final word a month later, I received the official county letter. It read, "The Pine Ridge HOA is permanently prohibited from engaging with, monitoring, surveying, or attempting to enforce any action related to Parcel 98-171. Any HOA member found trespassing or interfering with the property owner will be subject to criminal penalties." Signed by the sheriff. Stamped by the county, sealed. It was over. Truly over. I framed the letter and hung it inside the cabin doorway. Every time I walk in, it greets me like a trophy, a reminder that land belongs to the owner, not to self-appointed neighborhood tyrants. The final renovation finishing the cabin felt different after everything. The walls were smooth. The floors were level. Fresh paint gleamed. New windows brought in warm sunlight. The fireplace crackled beautifully at night. The porch railing was strong and sturdy. The air smelled like pine and cedar. Sometimes I'd sit outside with my morning coffee and watch the fog roll between the trees. Birds returned. Squirrels darted across the branches. The forest reclaimed its peace. Every now and then, Pine Ridge residents strolled by at a distance. Most didn't look my way. A few offered apologetic smiles. One old lady brought me homemade bread, she whispered. "We didn't know what the board was really doing. I'm glad you fought them." I thanked her. Humanity wasn't dead, just hidden behind HOA paperwork. Karen, I never saw her again. Rumor said she'd moved after becoming the laughingstock of the county. Good. Best ending possible. I bought a cabin for peace. I got war instead. But I fought back. With truth, cameras, documents, and backbone, the HOA wanted control. They wanted to intimidate me. They wanted to claim what was never theirs. In the end, I rebuilt more than a cabin. I rebuilt my peace, my independence, my land. And now when I sit on the porch watching the sunrise through the trees, I smile knowing one thing for sure. No HOA guard will ever step foot on my property again.